Sir Keir Starmer and President Trump have both hailed their talks at the White House as a major success, saying they've made progress towards ending the war in Ukraine and agreeing a trade deal between Britain and the United States. The British Prime Minister said it was a moment of tremendous opportunity and called for a peace deal that would not reward the aggressor. President Trump also said he would consider providing the security backstop in Ukraine that Sir Keir Starmer had been calling for. The US president praised Ukraine's President Zelenskyy after earlier describing him as a dictator. Mr. Zelenskyy will visit the White House later on Friday, with the two leaders expected to sign a major minerals deal. Our political editor Chris Mason was at the White House. He sent this report.
It is perhaps the ultimate political stage and backdrop, and is now home to a president whose love and command of that stage is reshaping the world before our eyes. The Prime Minister arrived here at the White House for one of the landmark moments of his time in office so far. And for a president who likes a theatrical flourish, the Prime Minister had one in his inside pocket.
So can I present the letter from the King to
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do. So this is a letter from His Majesty the King. It's an invitation for a second state visit. This is really special. This has never happened before. What I haven't got yet is your answer. I do need to.
The answer is yes.
Ukraine is a key talking point here, and there's a key question at the heart of it.
Mr. President, could you be persuaded, as part of a peace settlement in Ukraine, to provide air cover, a backstop security position to the contributions that Europe might make as well?
Well, so President Zelenskyy is coming to see me on Friday morning, and we're going to be signing really a very important agreement for both sides, because it's really going to get us into that country. We'll be working there. We'll have a lot of people working there. And so in that sense, it's very good. It's a backstop, you could say. I don't think anybody's going to play around if we're there with a lot of workers.
And what of the president's description of Ukraine's leader?
Mr. President, do you still think that Mr. Zelenskyy is a dictator?
Did I say that? I can't believe I said that. Next question.
Next, we were kicked out. They went into their private discussions and emerged a few hours later for a news conference where the president said the Prime Minister was a tough negotiator, the war in Ukraine will end fairly soon or not at all, and he was asked, had Keir Starmer persuaded him not to put tariffs on the UK?
I think we could very well end up with a real trade deal where the tariffs wouldn't be necessary. We'll see, but he earned whatever they pay him. He earned today. He was working hard at lunch, and I'm very receptive to it. I think we, in all fairness, in all seriousness, I think we have a very good chance at arriving at a very good deal.
Our trading relationship is not just strong, it's fair, balanced and reciprocal. We're leaders together in so many areas.
The US-UK relationship has always been close, but there are no guarantees with the new resident here. But for now at least, the Prime Minister's escaped the barbs and frost others have encountered. Chris Mason, BBC News in Washington.
And as we heard there, Donald Trump appears to have softened his attitude towards Ukraine's President Zelenskyy. He praised him after earlier referring to him as a dictator. And he said the two men would soon be signing a deal regarding Ukraine's mineral wealth. But what's the mood in Kiev? This is the BBC's James Waterhouse.
I think they are less hopeful, less certain than Donald Trump was sounding yesterday. He seems to be thinking or outwardly saying that he expects President Zelenskyy to sign this deal. From this side, this is a deal that would see America get access to billions of dollars worth of Ukraine's natural resources and oil and gas. But in exchange for what is the question being increasingly asked. It doesn't contain security guarantees yet, such as military presence, air defense systems to help Ukraine sustain a ceasefire after this war ends and to stop Russia from invading again. And so at the moment, I'm speaking to one opposition MP, there is a concern that whilst he is going to have a face-to-face meeting with Donald Trump, that is not to be dismissed. The outcome is harder to grasp, and there are calls here for Mr. Zelenskyy to involve Ukrainian Parliament more in this decision and to try and provide some kind of guarantee that Ukraine will get what it needs. I mean, we did see a slight warming of language, you're right, from Mr. Trump, where he said they both have great respect for each other. That is a climb down from calling him a dictator. But whether that equates to an agreement which would see an exchange of like with like for Ukraine, I think that is quite another question.
Let's speak to Peter Dickinson, editor of Ukraine Alert at the Atlantic Council think tank. Thank you for joining us on BBC News. So it appears that President Zelenskyy will receive a much warmer welcome from Donald Trump than many had expected. So what do you think he can realistically expect to achieve from his visit to Washington?
Well, I think one of the key issues here is that it will buy Ukraine some time. The comments coming from President Trump and from the White House and his administration have been deeply disturbing for Ukrainians this last few weeks. This very sharp turn toward Russia, the aggressive rhetoric against Ukraine has really raised fears that the American support for Ukraine is under threat long term. We may even face a scenario where Ukraine was being pushed into a very pro-Kremlin peace agreement, which would place Ukraine's entire existence as a nation under threat. Now, this deal, this resources, this minerals deal, will potentially buy Ukraine that time it needs. It doesn't bring security guarantees. It doesn't even guarantee military aid, but it does allow Donald Trump to declare victory. The deal maker can parade his deal and say, look, we're not just giving Ukraine aid for nothing. We're getting something in return. And Zelenskyy is able to ingratiate himself with the American president, and I'm sure he will press him for, in the short term, more military aid, and then more long term, the security guarantees that Ukraine so desperately needs.
And how open do you think Donald Trump is towards providing more military aid to Ukraine as it waits for a peace agreement to be reached with Russia?
Well, his most recent comments suggest that he is open to it. He said that he will look at that and he will be prepared to provide aid until a peace deal or a ceasefire at least can be signed. So I think that this deal, now the actual details of this minerals agreement are in some respects quite vague, but it does allow Trump to be able to say that he's protecting American interests and he's making sure that America is not simply financing the Ukrainian war effort and getting nothing in return. So it does open the door for Trump to save face in front of his own electorate and continue the aid. So that's certainly what we'd be looking for today. I think there's unlikely to be any agreement on a long-term security guarantee, but Ukraine will be hoping that they hear at least encouraging words and perhaps even confirmation that military aid in the short term will continue.
And those talks towards ending the war in Ukraine between the United States and Russia, could we see Ukrainian officials being invited to those talks?
Well, at this stage, it does look very much like Trump's vision is for a bilateral negotiation. That's certainly his style. He likes the idea of the big boys, the superpowers sitting down and talking to each other head to head. He's very keen, I'm sure, on having a summit with Vladimir Putin. Ukraine is very much a third wheel here, somehow being left to the side, but they will be involved in discussions. They will be certainly consulted, and President Zelenskyy will make his case today that they need to be very much involved in that in parallel, if not directly. It's unlikely that Ukraine and Russia will speak directly, very unlikely in fact, but Ukraine will certainly push their position. Zelenskyy will today emphasize that it's absolutely crucial that a parallel track of discussion is ongoing between the Trump White House and Ukraine.
Peter Dickinson, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And of course, we'll have live coverage from Washington, D.C. later on Friday, of course, as those meetings between President Trump and President Zelenskyy get underway there.